goals and have metrics so we can show that we're achieving progress. And I just want to say, like, I'm really honored to be able to have this position and to work with this team. The momentum that I've seen grow even since I've started on this is really remarkable. And I'm looking forward to keeping that going. And Ted, do you think we should do introductions, or are there too many people on the call?
I kind of think there are too many people, but if we want to go around and say everybody's name, I think that might be a good way to do this. We've already done the organization in the chat, so maybe just a quick name. And my name is Ted Hafner, and I'm the Goal Group Coordinator for Chicago Wilderness. Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Riley. I'm the Managing Director of Chicago Wilderness. To my right is Pat Pearson.
What about Jim?
Hi, I'm Jim Heisler. I'm a volunteer. I'm the Vice President of McHenry County Conservation Foundation. We're an arm of the McHenry County Conservation District, and I'm just here to listen. Thanks.
Rick?
Rick McCandless, North Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District.
Eileen Davis?
Hi, Eileen Davis, environmental educator with the Lake County Forest Preserves, and I coordinate our education programs around native plant landscaping and thought this would be a good meeting to attend today.
Jenny and then Maggie Jones. All right, let's go with Maggie.
Good morning, Maggie Jones with Stantec. I work in both project management and grant compliance.
And I have Casey and Brandon next.
Casey Sullivan, Argonne National Laboratory. Thank you.
Brandon Hayes with Bold Bison. I'm representing the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Project today.
Lou and then Gretchen.
Lou Millet with Tallgrass Associates. Checking in to see how this topic is related to restoration work and open space management and land use plans.
I am Gretchen Manson, and I'm with the Land Conservancy of McHenry County. I'm the food forest manager there, and got an invitation from this for this meeting, and was told that maybe it would be something I'd be interested in. So here I am.
Awesome. I have Adam and then Matt Mulligan.
Hello, good morning. My name is Adam Janicki. I'm with Christopher Burke Engineering. Sorry if you can't see me too well. The sun shines directly towards me in my screen. But yeah, really excited to participate in this meeting and just to kind of hear everyone's thoughts and further our collaboration together.
Hey, Ted, good to see you again. Matt Mulligan, I'm an education manager with the Lake County Forest Preserves.
And then the last view on my screen is Groundwork Rhode Island. Welcome.
Hi, sorry to join late. Just checking in and getting to know everyone. We're Groundwork Rhode Island with a tree planting program from several different sources and within Northern Rhode Island.
Awesome. Anybody else that wants to introduce themselves that didn't get a chance to because they're not on a Zoom box?
Ted, I want to introduce myself. I'm Amy Flansburgh.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
It's okay, I don't mind. I'm Amy Flansburgh with Stantec. I work with a number of folks in the Chicago area on habitat initiatives, including ComEd. So that's why I'm here today. And also, Lindsay, I think we can see your screen, but it's a beautiful ladybug and not maybe your slide deck. Is that the case for others as well?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
All right.
Yeah, and Ted, you may have another screen of participants because I think you're missing more. But this is Jeff Mangler. I work for Hay and Associates, and I'm the president of the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership.
And I'm here. I'm Robin Fleckney with the Village of Glenview. I'm the Natural Resources Manager.
Hi, I'm Ramona Michael. I'm from the Tree Preservation Commission for the Village of Franklin Park. Thank you.
And I'm Lisa Lambros. I'm with Riverside with the Landscape Advisory Commission and Olmsted of Riverside.
I'm Sonny Cohn. I'm with the Bird Conservation Network.
I'm Remick Ensweiler, ecologist, Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways.
Hi, Pat Thomas with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. Been on many CW calls, but this is my first prioritizing green infrastructure quarterly, so I'm happy to be here today. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Caroline Hernandez with the University of Illinois Chicago and the Rights of Ways Habitat Working Group.
Hi, I'm Catherine O'Reilly, and I'm also with the Rights of Ways Habitat Working Group at the University of Illinois Chicago.
I'm Jeff Edstrom with the Non-Point Source Unit at Illinois EPA.
Anybody else that we missed?
Yes, John Wasik, Lake County Forest Preserve District.
Lindsay Darling, Chicago Region Trees Initiative, Morton Arboretum.
Anna Maria.
Hi, I'm Anna Maria Leone from Home and Growns in Chicago.
Jeanette Marsh from US EPA Region 5 in Chicago.
Is that it? All right, Lindsay, take it away.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
It's not a ladybug?
No.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. This is an awesome group of people. I'm so excited that we have this momentum. And again, I'm just going to give a quick overview of what's going on at ComEd. I think a few of you have seen me present these slides like 5 times, so I apologize to you. But so ComEd is one of the largest landowners in Illinois, and we have, I think it's 5,400 miles of transmission corridors on our system. So we're in a really unique position to engage in conservation and really make a big difference in the state. And a lot of you probably already know that Illinois is known as the prairie state, but we only have less than 0.01% of prairie left here. And as part of trying to combat that trend, ComEd started its prairie program in 1994. Now we have over 500 acres of prairie habitat that we're actively maintaining and restoring, in different stages of restoration, from pretty scrubby to remnant quality. And we have over 40 sites at this point. And many of them are, we participate in voluntary third-party certification programs through Wildlife Habitat Council and the National Wildlife Federation, just to show that we are meeting certain standards in our restoration. Generally, we add 1 to 2 sites per year, totaling around 15 acres. And the way that we prioritize generally which sites we choose, we use tools like Chicago Wilderness Alliances and Friends that emphasize biodiversity and equity and connectivity. And then we also look at strengthening the partnerships that we already have in the region, as well as building new ones. So some of the really big benefits of our prairie program, beyond just the ecosystem services that it provides, is connectivity. So we have tons of forest preserve land in northern Illinois, huge opportunities to connect those open lands and decrease habitat fragmentation, largely due to agriculture, which has been the trend for the past 100 years. So that creates corridors that wildlife can pass through, which is a big benefit of doing restoration on any type of right-of-way property. We do have threatened and endangered plants and wildlife, and as well as candidate species on a lot of our land. So that helps us both on a regulatory level and just because it's the right thing to do. And it really helps us build relationships, again, with external stakeholders, which is hugely beneficial to ComEd for many reasons. And that can be other right-of-way organizations like railroads or like highway transportation departments. Forest preserve districts, we have very strong relationships with several, and universities like UIC. And then obviously it really helps benefit our customers and our employees, which is important to us, but also the communities that we serve and work in. So we're mitigating climate change through things like managing stormwater runoff and potentially reducing urban heat island effects. We are able to, as I said, prioritize projects in some cases that are in disadvantaged communities. So we're not only working where people are already heavily advantaged, both really economically. And then we create a lot of education and volunteerism opportunities, both for our employees, I didn't put this here, but also in the communities. We work with grade schools and universities to advance conservation. This is just a picture of a pollinator garden. This was one of our prairie sites last year that we built at one of our ComEd reporting centers in Lombard. We got a $10,000 grant from the Pollinate program, which is a UIC Stantec program. We're able to get some of the employees out there to help with the garden, and just a picture on the left. So we're hopeful that this will create more opportunities for volunteerism as well as education. We're building some interpretive signs and trying to get some educators out there to do plant ID and things like that. And then just real quick, so we have a grant program called Green Region. Some of you actually might be interested in applying for it. I think the RFP was just released a few weeks ago. We award grants for up to $10,000 for pollinator, climate resiliency, and conservation projects. And you can see that the program was started in 2012. And at this point, we have over 1.6 million people benefited, certain number of ADA accessible trails. And then numbers as well for trees planted, 38,600, and 590 acres of land enhanced. So that's kind of a high level overview of what we're doing. We do have a lot more going on, but I just wanted to touch next on what the vision is for goal 3. And what's our baseline? How are we going to, what are we looking to do and how we're going to get there? So I kind of inherited this goal of by 2030, transforming 84,000 acres of non-nature reserve lands on private, corporate, and public properties, creating new corridors and increasing climate resilience across all the 4 states. Are focusing on Northern Illinois, but we care about all of you. So when I looked further into that 84,000 acre number, talking with Ted and Laura, nobody really knew where it came from. I did find an old webpage from a few years ago that references the Chicago Wilderness Biodiversity Recovery Plan and the Chicago Wilderness Climate Action Plan for Nature. And I couldn't find this number in either of those documents, but it does say that 3% of whatever that number is 84,000 acres, which would be 2.8 million. So that's as far as I got Ted and Laura and doing that research, but at least I got somewhere. So that's really, I think, one of the big goals of this group is figuring out that baseline and figuring out how we're going to get there. And I'll just skip to this slide real quick. So as I said, we're looking outside of open spaces here. We have so many forest preserves. How do we get this open land connected and work with new partners? So as I said, our other rights of way can also work with businesses and corporations. Kind of, as I said, ComEd is putting that pollinator garden in, and that's just a pilot we're hoping to expand. There are also just huge numbers of data centers that are planned to go into Northern Illinois in the next 5-10 years, largely due to AI and Microsoft and Google, et cetera, moving in. So that also could be a huge opportunity. Expanding the number of school districts and universities beyond the University of Illinois system in their campuses. And I think brownfield development is another thing that, correct me if I'm wrong, but Ted wanted to work on through this program, since you can really get a lot of acreage covered and really benefit the communities in that way. And then private landowners as well, just noting that even narrow habitat, if it's, gardens or what have you, can really make that difference in connectivity. And then just in terms of funding, I know we're going to need to figure that out too, in terms of how we're going to get there. And everyone knows we've got a lot of uncertainty federally. We're probably going to have to focus more on private foundations and nonprofits, you know, like National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. I know Donnelly Foundation was once a partner, et cetera. So we're just going to have to be creative on that front. But just to back up, I would like to have a discussion, and I'll let Ted decide if, you know, how much time we have for this today, but how can we set a goal or a metric that best demonstrates that we've had an impact through partnering on this? So some ideas, you know, these are metrics that the Fish and Wildlife Foundation uses, as well as some federal entities. I think acres restored is the one that pretty much everybody uses, but we can also look at protected or enhanced, which are slightly different. I think a really important one is going to be acres connected, or miles of connective habitat, just to show that impact to wildlife that we're having. Trees planted or vegetation could be a big one, again, showing the reduction of urban heat island effect and other, you know, carbon sequestration and things like that. And then thinking about, do we want to have people metrics? Do we want to say, you know, we're working in X number of EJ neighborhoods, we educated X number of people, and that could look like a lot of different things. But yeah, that's really all I have. I just wanted to provide that introduction and open it up for, you know, how do you think we can best get there, and what are those metrics that we need to describe that?
Lindsay, I think that was a great overview of ComEd stuff, and the goals and metrics are certainly a worthy conversation. For everybody's sort of reference here, the metrics are sort of a Green Vision Initiative wide opportunity this year that we're really focusing on. So I imagine that we can start this conversation today, but we're not going to finish it. And I think this provides a good context for what's to come moving forward. I'd love to actually punt a discussion until after I go and Brandon goes, because that might be part of the discussion, if that's possible.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. We're definitely going to solve this today.
I'm going to share my slides real quick to sort of tee up Brandon. And where, there we go, share. Oh boy, hold on. Okay. All right, so some of this we've gone through. There's the quick agenda, done the introductions. We have these, well, as Lindsay said, we have this 84,000 acre number on non-nature reserve lands, which we're thinking of. That's kind of a weird mouthful, and no one really knows what it is, but it's basically corporate campuses, open spaces, and opportunities to provide native landscapes and biodiverse communities, right? So some of the strategies we've come up with are increasing the number of businesses and corporations actively engaged, engage additional rights of way owners. The Growing Chicago Habitat is doing a bang up job with that, and has been for the past, I don't know, 3 to 4 years at least, if not more. So we want to capitalize on that. We want to, like Lindsay said, engage in more school districts and universities, and then support the Illinois and Chicago Wilderness 30 by 30 initiatives. We had this last bullet point that we may move to water now that water is up and running, but that's to support EPA approved 9-point watershed plans, understanding that that's a really good opportunity to get 319 federal funding associated with that, to put green infrastructure initiatives and natural climate solutions into the ground at sort of a neighborhood or county watershed scale. So that may stay here, that may move to water, both, it's germane to both groups. So that's something that we should think about. Does it stay here or do both groups tackle it because it's a big lift? And then we're interested in today talking about how we expand the work. There's some good synergies with the Oak Ecosystems Recovery Plan that Brandon will get into in a moment. And then some sort of strategies behind this and rationales are, there's no initiative for CWA that focuses on implementation for natural native landscapes and open spaces. So that's sort of the work of this group. There is opportunity to expand the working group beyond the current right-of-way scope, which has been the focus for the past few years. And I'm hoping that the OERP work could dovetail nicely in there. Both groups notionally focus on pollinator habitats. So I think that's a good fit, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And then while all CWA initiatives revolve around trees as a theme, there is no home for them right now in any of the goal teams. And I see sort of this as the best opportunity, especially since trees are both green infrastructure and natural climate solutions. The synergies between the rights of way groups work and OERP's work are pollinators. Native landscapes and urban forests each depend on pollinators to survive. Other synergies include invasive species, education and treatment, especially of buckthorn and calorie pear. And then both groups are concerned with private landscapes and they work in and adjacent to large landscapes. So the rights of way are a connector for these patches of habitats that we have going on. And then there's also a large community focus that both efforts have in common. So looking at audiences for potential connections, we talked about the schools. Now we just need to identify some starting points. We have a couple inroads with some other groups that I'm trying to arrange. But we work with UIC, obviously, DePaul, and other universities to start on. And then we do have relationships with some of the private school district or public school districts. Another opportunity that came up in a sort of a soft launch meeting late last year was church and faith-based groups. So the Catholic Diocese of Chicago, temples, mosques, cemeteries, and potential groups are Faith in Place and Amani Village, as well as others. And then large landowners came up, homeowners associations or associations of HOAs. Corporate campuses has always been a bailiwick of this group. And then the rights of way has always been sort of a foundational audience as well. So who are some of the target groups? The Laudato Si and the Catholic Church. There's a lot of parity there. I mentioned Faith in Place, Illinois Green Alliance, and the Go Green groups. We should be looking at rights of way organizations. We have that fairly well covered, but there can always be more in the room. The Mayor's Municipal Caucus came up, Wild Ones and Wild One groups. We have now ties to Climate Action Evanston. And then we've done a lot of work with the Village of Riverside in the past, so that might be an opportunity there. And I know education in Riverside and working with their schools in Brookfield and Riverside has been a big push of that work. So those are some of the quick sort of ideas that are floating with this group in addition to some of the metrics. But Brandon, do you want to talk a little bit about OERP for a minute, or do we have questions, comments, anything like that? I think we have a good 5 minutes before Brandon goes if there are questions, but if not, Brandon, you can hop in.
There were a few questions in the chat earlier when
Okay.
Lindsay was speaking, and one of them was about mapping. And then there was a comment about the green infrastructure vision, which was the foundation for a lot of the metrics, although the hub has been sort of the focal point for compiling a lot of the mapping and data information. So Lindsay, do you want to answer the question about the mapping from ComEd standpoint? I think that was directed at you.
All right, we can definitely get you. I believe all this information is public, and I would ask Amy Flansburgh if we can confirm, but we can definitely get a map of like where the prairie sites are located.
Yeah, it should be on ComEd's website if you just Google ComEd Prairie Program, but it might not be fully up to date. So yeah, I think if that's something we want to follow up, if you're looking for those sites for your own purposes, that might be data we can share in a format that's useful. If you're just sort of asking if the public can see information about the program, the answer to that is yes.
Thanks, Amy. Yes, we do work with our contemporaries in other states. Is there another question?
Also with the mapping question, we are working on a few grants for the hub, which is our GIS mapping portal this year, and that is a focus. So maybe there can be some sharing or housing of whatever maps those are, Amy and Lindsay, on the hub site.
Great, thank you.
And Lou, we do have, I can put a link in the chat, but we do have the rights of way mapping in GIS that the hub has come up with, and it's actually really pretty phenomenal. And they do prioritization by overlap and need, and give me a second and I'll put that in the chat. Other questions? All right, hearing none, Brandon, the floor is yours. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks a lot, Ted. Thanks for having me. Once upon a time, way back in 2014, Chicago Wilderness Alliance worked on putting together an oak ecosystem recovery plan for the entire region. Many of you are aware of the oak ecosystem recovery plan. At least one of you who's on the call today actually helped write the oak ecosystem recovery plan. I put a link in the chat to Morton Arboretum's website, the Chicago Region Trees Initiative Oak Ecosystem Recovery Project site. I'm going to share my screen and let's go to that page actually. So in 2014, and forgive me, those of you who know this history, Chicago Wilderness Alliance, with the participation of a bunch of partners, created the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan. The plan called for cooperative work across the entire region to both save and protect and restore the remnant oak ecosystems that were found throughout the region, and also to think about best practices, think about how to communicate that to the public, sort of everything tied to sort of what it would actually take region-wide to save oak ecosystems and restore the ones that we already have. It was a very dynamic plan that really dug into sort of what was here, historically, really looking into the data, both sort of cultural data from reports, and then also, soil type, all that kind of stuff, to understand sort of how wooded in terms of oak woodlands the Chicago region was. You can see all this great data here in the plan itself. After compiling all of this, that involved also case studies for sort of efforts that were ongoing throughout the region, the plan truly put out a clarion call for choosing priority areas in each of the counties of the region, to really identify what are those core most high quality or, most protected at this point and therefore able to build on in each landscape. So for instance, in Cook County, it was, the Palos area. In Lake County, it was Riverwoods. It was, that whole corridor going up, through Ryerson Woods and Libertyville and that whole area. And so on and so forth through each of the different counties. Then what Chicago Wilderness Alliance did was essentially hand off the administering of this, so sort of creating the working group to the Chicago Region Trees Initiative, where it's been housed for the past 10 years. We're now in the 10th year of work. Since 2020, since high pandemic times of the summer of 2020, Bold Bison, my firm, has been helping to facilitate the working group for the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan. We meet twice a year, once in February and once in August, for working group updates and meetings sort of across the entire region with all the land managers, nonprofits, and even private individuals who are just interested in sort of hearing more about oaks and volunteering. Our next meeting, our February meeting, here's a plug for it, is actually this Thursday at 1. So if you are not on the list, have not been invited to that meeting of the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan Working Group, please do drop your info in the chat box, and I'll be sure to send you an invitation. We're going to meet online from 1 to 3 on Thursday for our biannual meeting. And what's happening is, so 10 years ago, we created this great plan, these initiatives, this call for how to proceed. For 10 years, we put the plan into action, which was really great. This is one of those things where it wasn't just a plan that was created and then put on a shelf somewhere, in the back offices of various, partners. It was something that, through Chicago Wilderness Alliance and through the Chicago Region Trees Initiative, has been a living, working, on the ground vehicle for moving this work forward. In addition to the 2 meetings, we also do, on-site learning, we do field trips, we do all sorts of sort of workshops and things throughout the year. But really that core of it is sort of, how do we work together across the region? How do we make sure that the work does not stop at the boundary lines of the different counties or municipalities or the different areas within which various land trusts who are part of the initiative work? And how do we bring together the best sort of resources that we have available? So I want to touch on briefly before talking about the work ahead. So in a legacy way, and you can get this through, linking through the website that I shared, the Healthy Habitats brochure is something that was spearheaded by Chicago Region Trees Initiative and the Oak Group, and also, Lake County Forest Preserves, to put together sort of best practices for different scales of landowners, whether you're folks, with a yard, with the Healthy Homes brochure, whether you're folks, with thinking about a little bit broader landscape in terms of the healthy habitats, maybe at the HOA level or the corporate campus level, or thinking about how various, oak ecosystems move out of protected land at the county level and the county forest preserve districts and into privately held neighborhoods and business districts. And then also a final brochure, Healthy Hedges, which is talking about the best replacements for those invasive species. That led to, over the past year, an initiative to bring together landowner resource packets. And what these packets are is they are one-stop shop for the best possible sort of resources for folks thinking, whether it's at sort of the, my yard and my home level, or my neighborhood level, or my corporate campus level, all sorts of the best information, the best material, the best how-tos, and the best resources sort of across all of the partners in the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan. So I'll drop the link for this in the chat too in a moment, but this is, again, sort of, it's a one-stop shop out to a bunch of materials. So you can see that it was, some of this provided by CRTI, Forest Preserve District of Will County, Open Lands, and on from there, Illinois Landscape Contractors Association, all sorts of things coming together and pulling this into this one-stop shop to share with landowners. And it's been found to be really useful already for folks, for instance, like the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association, as a way to begin to talk to their clients about, what might be best practices in terms of having the healthiest landscape, getting rid of the invasives on their properties, and taking care of the land. I know a lot of you who are on the call participated and contributed to this resource. So thanks a lot for that. Like, it's this living thing. We've launched it out. We're getting a lot of great feedback out with folks who are making use of it. So thank you to all of those folks. What I wanted to talk to everybody about today, and I will share the link for the resource packets now in the chat. But what, sort of Ted wanted to engage everybody in was this thinking about the 10th anniversary of the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan. So in 2024, as we hit the 10th anniversary, we pulled together a small working group that looked at the plan, the original plan, and began to think about how can we revise it and what needs to be updated in terms of how we use the plan and how we keep this to be a living document going forward. And what the small group that included from Chicago Wilderness Alliance included both Ted and Laura. It included Lindsay Darling, who's on the call, one of the original authors of the plan, and a bunch of volunteers from across the region, sort of leaders in the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan working group. And what the small group team came up with was this idea of building on the strength of the data and the science from the original plan. So identifying what needs to be updated. What do we know now about climate impacts that we didn't know in 2014? What do we know now about sort of diseases threatening oaks that we didn't know in 2014? What do we know about canopy cover and sort of the general landscape that we did not know in 2014? So sort of identifying where that needs to happen. But then also really thinking about the successes of the plan to date, sort of the successes of the working group, and how we build on those successes and do it in a strategic way. So between now and October 2025, we're continuing the work with the larger Oak Ecosystem Working Group to think about, how we think about a revision of the plan as a strategic plan for the group. So thinking about maybe a 5-year horizon, from 2025 to 2030, it resonates with a lot of other initiatives around 2030, federal government notwithstanding. And thinks about how we really think about what we can build on that has been working well, what we need to sort of sideline and reconsider, and how we can sort of be very, very strategic and sort of actual in the way that we move forward with the plan. So a lot of that is happening right now, and part of it is this idea of reaching out kind of beyond the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan working group itself and really engaging in, with, coming back into the Chicago Wilderness Alliance fold through my being here today and sort of getting the reaction of how can this green initiative from CWA interact and connect with the work of the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan group. How do we think about how climate comes in? How do we document the success? Because the success of this group is also part of the success of Chicago Wilderness as a whole, out of which this initiative came. How do we update that research in an effective and efficient way? How do we, collaborate better? How do we communicate the plan out in a more robust way? How do we bring in Indigenous perspectives that are almost entirely absent from the original version of the plan? And then how do we think about carbon, climate, offsets, that whole sort of burgeoning sort of resource that's coming up too? That's where we are. And, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see faces better. And so, Ted, I'm curious, from your perspective, and Lindsay and Laura in sort of leading this group, how do we want to jump in terms of kind of questions or thinking about, a closer partnership between this green initiative and, the work going on with the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan?
I think that's a great question, Brandon. And one of the things that's been swirling around in my mind is how do we do that, and how do we do it efficiently so that we don't add a ton of meetings to everybody's schedule, because we know the capacity is an issue, right? CWA is a all volunteer organization with the exception of Laura and Lake, and so you know, that can be a challenge, that capacity to attend more meetings. One of the things that I'm curious is, how do these groups meld together, given that, Brandon, you mentioned you have a meeting coming up Thursday. I don't know if you have other meeting dates set this year that we could sort of, you know, conjoin. That was sort of part of the conversation that I wanted to have today. As we think about expanding the fold and bringing other opportunities and other audiences and participants into the groups.
Sure. Maybe a word quickly about sort of the culture of the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan Working Group. That we have these two meetings. We have a meeting in February and a meeting in August. The August meeting date is set, but we might need to move it. So I guess not totally set. So we don't quite have that. And those are sort of the core. They're 2 hours each, and we spend part of the time doing updates from all of the partners, and then part of the time sort of talking about kind of new things on the agenda. So for instance, in Thursday's meeting, we're going to do updates, and we're going to talk about the revision of the plan. We're going to talk about the resource packets that I was just sharing the link to, and sort of how those are rolling out. We're also going to talk a bit about federal funding and sort of what folks are seeing and hearing in the landscape, you know, with all the awfulness there. And we're also going to talk about sort of initiatives that people are seeing, what kind of workshops we want to have. So again, we do get out on the land often throughout the year, throughout the entire region, you know, with site visits and tours. So we're going to talk a little bit about sort of who might, you know, have a site that they want to share and bring people out to. So a little bit of that planning for the rest of the year. And then also apparently, so someone wants to come and talk to us about sort of standing surviving ash, sort of in the landscape and sort of what we can learn from that. So a little bit beyond oaks. So I bring that detail up in terms of the agenda because, you know, anyone from this group who would love to come on Thursday would be great. We could create some space too for maybe some pollination. I don't know, Ted, if you were able to make it, but also those gatherings on the landscape, we make them available somewhat broadly. So the working group is comprised, like, obviously of sort of land managers from forest preserve districts and sort of, you know, folks working at land trusts, but we also do have private landowners and private folks, you know, and who volunteer just for their time and to be aware of what's going on in the meeting. So we could also expand some of those invitations out to some of the opportunities on the land for sort of learning and connection and other workshops we put together to this group also, to begin to kind of create some of that pollination there. The other thing too that we do, and it's a resource I know that CWA has sort of used this too, is sort of thinking about that connection between meetings. And so we do use, you know, a slide deck template update for each of the counties to sort of as sort of a living document to kind of keep things updated in between the meetings. So that's something where that creates some of that architecture for it. We also do monthly, you know, sort of news briefs that go out to folks, monthly updates for folks. And then we also do share out any sort of resources or tools or things that share with us. So that gets shared with my team with Bold Bison, and then we, you know, share that out with the broader group. So that's a little bit of sort of how we keep the working group cohesive as a group and a culture. And I think there are definitely some touch points where we could definitely expand that out to this group too in a fairly easy way without overwhelming everybody.
One of the things that I'm thinking of, at least right now, and this could change if the group wants it to change, but we have committed to at least our quarterly meetings this year. We haven't set the next date yet because we wanted to get input from this group, but we can make that more frequent if this group wants. I don't want to overwhelm with meetings, but there is some flexibility here with the rest of the year, and that was one of my sort of to-dos in the last 5 minutes or so, is to try to find a next meeting date in the second quarter, unless this group wants to meet more often. and I'll leave that up to the group and Lindsay. The other thing about this group is we have the Growing Chicago Habitats group, right? And they also meet generally twice a year for a half-day workshop and a meal, usually lunch. I don't know. Go ahead, Laura.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh,
I just,
okay.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm not aware that those meetings have been set, so maybe Caroline or do we know when those meetings are? Or maybe Laura, is that why you raised your hand?
No, no, I was just thinking, like, getting back to the discussion, I was hoping to hear what people's thoughts were, given everything that we just threw at them, that there might be, yeah, that there might be some ideas here. And I saw that Anne Marie had an offer in the chat, and I just kind of wanted to hear some feedback from what was presented today, and that there is a big task, but we are looking at ways to break that down, as Ted mentioned, and Brandon mentioned. We can kind of compartmentalize around these topics, but is there some thoughts from the group here?
Anna Marie.
Hi, everybody. So I'm located in North Lawndale, and I think I've seen some of you in the other like tree ambassador programs and CRTI meetings. But I'm just offering, if you all need like a connection with other organizations here in Chicago. I'm pretty intimate with a lot of the organizations. So if we're trying to do like a concerted effort in a particular area, like in Englewood or North Lawndale or Austin or something, that's where I can provide my expertise and connections as a volunteer. We also have a perennial plant nursery in the city. So we also grow, what's that called? Nativars, non-natives, trees, shrubs, and other plants, in case you have people that need something immediately, or that we could also contract grow for them here in the city versus going out into, 90 miles away where most of the nurseries are. And it's a social enterprise. So we do work with people that are also returning citizens, just to let you know.
That's great. Thank you for that offer.
And then Catherine posted that the next Growing Chicago Habitats meeting hasn't been set yet, but they're thinking mid-spring. So that might be a good opportunity for a quarterly meeting. And we can keep you posted on that. The other question that we probably should get into, aside from, we know we have metrics discussions this year, but how do folks want to see this meeting run? Is it best to share information? Is it best to have, like, there are other goal groups that have a series of presenters that come to these meetings? Or do you want more of a business format of like what people and partners are doing? That should be discussed at some point too. And if you guys just have opinions, you can put them in the chat.
Yeah, Jeff put in the chat that we could look to groups updating or creating new watershed plans,
Yeah.
which is, thanks, Jeff. We have been, there's another team, the Protecting Healthy Watersheds group, and I know Tessa's on this call, and we've been meeting to try to advance the watershed conversations to look at the region itself, and would really welcome that moving that forward as well.
Well, one of the key things for that is all watershed plans tend to have projects that need to get done to address water quality issues or whatever. And so you can actually calculate what's the pollutant load reductions for different types of projects, including planting trees and looking at ecosystem recovery. Sorry. So it's something that as long as you coordinate with the existing ones and look at the ones that might be looking to update in the next few years, because the watershed plans have a lifetime of 10 years. And so getting into identifying different areas where there might have been oaks before, where you could try and get them back in place as part of BMP projects.
I love that. I love that sort of, because I think sometimes, and as useful as the organizing principles for the oak ecosystem recovery plan have been, I think, sometimes it's a little bit of that, oh, we're over here doing our thing in a bubble. And so thinking about how goals of the plan connect into other existing, goals and also resources, I think that's a really important piece of the work. So thank you for surfacing that. That's great.
Yeah, and if you haven't noticed, we are about synergies and finding common elements to move things forward rather than making more work. And sometimes work is made in the process, but what we're trying to do is tap into, as Brandon said, existing networks and groups to elevate native plantings and habitats and pollinators in the region. Well, I guess we have kind of a swirl. Do we want to look at next meeting dates, given the fact that we don't know when the Growing Chicago habitat will be, except later in the spring? We are in February now, so the next quarterly meeting would be probably April or May. We could go out into June, but I know the beginning of June gets kind of crazy with graduations, weddings, that kind of fun stuff. So I'm not sure where to go. Lindsay, do you have any input on this? Are there dates that are better for you?
I would definitely say spring. I know everything is busy, right? But once you get into the summer, like everybody's traveling, and as you said, graduations and all this stuff. So I would think we should look at April or May.
Okay. Do we want to do the first full week in May and target like Tuesday the 6th or Tuesday the 13th at the same time? I am open both days. Oh, sorry, today's Monday. Sorry, Monday the 5th or Monday the 12th at the same time. And I'm still open both days.
Sorry, what date are you proposing, Ted?
The 5th or the 12th of May. And we could go at the same time.
You just want somebody to say yes? I propose May 5th.
May 5th. It looks good for Amy. Okay. Why don't we target May 5th at 11, right? Awesome. Well, this has been great. I think we've accomplished a lot. We have a lot to do, but I think this was a really sort of a good introduction and really well played off our soft launch that sort of looked at these concepts and needed refinement, but the refinement is in the works. And I do think there are a lot of overlaps among these groups and efforts, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, right? So we will see everybody in May, and thank you for coming today. Lindsay, any last words before you send us away?
No, thank you, everybody. I'm really excited about this effort, and yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Brandon and Lindsay and Ted.